Daniel Jones tops our list of guys that meet our threshold.
Yeah, the one good New York quarterback.
91%. Let's slow down. Every time we get excited about Daniel Jones, he lets
I'd
us
still
down
take
as well.
Josh Allen over Daniel Jones.
That's right.
Yes.
Nicely
Oh, the
done.
New York quarterback. That's fair.
Nicely
fair
done.
enough. Fair enough.
Don't open the can of worms of Buffalo, New York,
New Jersey.
Yeah.
Josh Allen is actually the only New York quarterback.
Also true.
By the letter of the law.
Also very true.
All right.
Anyway, either way, it was just a dumb joke, but thank you for the correction.
That's all right. We had fact check on this mainstream media show.
I was told there'd be no fact checking. I was told there was no fact checking.
And there is Big Show sitting there fact checking.
Yeah.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Connor Rogers, Jay Croucher, Lawrence Jackson. No Matthew Berry today.
No.
You've officially taken over the chair.
Yeah, I'm the captain now.
That's
You will
right.
not get this seat back, Matthew. It all looks different from over here. You're a lot closer.
Yeah, that's nice.
Nice.
Do you feel like you the man?
I do. I feel taller, Lawrence.
All right, yeah, there you
6'1",
go.
I feel 7 foot.
There you
It's
go.
great.
Maybe some ice in the cup today?
Like
Yeah, no, I can't start reenacting the lifestyle of Barry. That's sickening.
no popcorn.
No, on the flight back from Pittsburgh, I'm sure, I don't care if he cares about me telling him this, but talking about this, on the flight back from Pittsburgh on Monday morning at about 8 a.m., Matthew Berry's ordering Diet Cokes.
Like on from the steward, like the flight attendant.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't be ordering Diet Cokes at 8 a.m.
That's how he does. Yeah, we was
strange.
recording a show in Pittsburgh at the Applebee's, and what do we get there? 10 a.m.
Yeah.
He ordering up a Diet Coke, but then asking for bacon and eggs with it. So he had the,
So it's
the
literally
nice little
coffee for him.
mixture. Yeah.
It's got to be his coffee.
Yeah, and then after he asked on the flight for Diet Coke, he asked if there was a platter of chicken tenders available. There wasn't on the
Like the
flight,
Yankee
unfortunately.
Stadium chicken bucket.
Exactly.
He's like,
right.
do you have that
The
here?
important
on the
thing
flight?
though is he just only want the chicken tenders, like no sauce, no nothing on them, just straight chicken.
Yep.
Nothing.
That's right. Yeah. It's
The
very
very
sick.
special.
Very sick.
Listen, it's Wednesday here at the Happy Hour Bar. We got Keep It Open, Close It Out. We're going to kick off with everything going on with the Texans offense. Of course, who's eating good. We have a lot to get through right now. And, of course, we will end the show with our early line alert for Week 6, some of the points, totals, and spreads that we like early in the week. So let's jump right into it, fellas. Keep it open or close it out. And right now, a lot going on with the Texans offense as Nico Collins has been placed on IR. What once was a day-to-day injury and then a week-to-week injury is now at minimum a 4-week injury. And we heard from C.J. Stroud this week after the game that winning isn't easy. Winning is going to be even harder without his number one wide receiver. Take a listen.
I always say, man, winning in the NFL is not easy. So, of course, you're not looking at yourself like, dang, we were perfect. Clearly, we're not. But I mean, that's every week. There's always things you can clean up. Some things are more abrupt and more noticeable than others. But I feel like when you can find a way to find a win, man, like that shows you how much of a resilient team you are. So, man, you learn with a dub, and that's the best thing that you can do.
Jay, before we get into Stroud himself, I mean, this is a massive hit for an offense that's already dealt with plenty of injury this season.
Yeah, definitely. Nico's been the best wide receiver in football, probably by margin. He was on his way to another huge day last week. I think in terms of the ripple effects of this, Stephon Diggs, you're probably starting anyway. Tank Dell, you probably weren't, but now I think you are. And then even like Dalton Schultz might become a little bit more viable. And I think they're going to lean into the run game when Joe Mixon comes back. We don't know when that's going to be, but I think the main thing is that it's stock up mainly for Dell and Schultz.
Yeah, I wouldn't be so, because we see this Texans offense. We know what it's capable of. We've seen C.J. Stroud back-to-back 300-plus yard games, so we know what the offense can do. What I would say is I wouldn't get so, locked in on this offense to where you're going to pick up another Texans receiver like a Robert Woods or John Mechie, those guys, because those guys behind Tank Dell and Nico Collins, those guys will kind of run by a committee and they'll get their reps like that. It'll be Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, and then the rest.
So this leads us to the conversation with C.J. Stroud right now, the borderline startable quarterback in fantasy right now. Lawrence, the yards have been there recently. He's just been hurt by not throwing for a lot of touchdowns recently. This was a guy that was drafted to be a top 6 to 8 quarterback in fantasy.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten there yet. Do you ride this one out and keep it open? He's been under 16 fantasy points in 3 of his past 4 games.
Yeah, this one is tough to sit him, especially if you drafted him as such as a top 6 to 8 quarterback. But he's quarterback 14 this season on a points per game basis. He's got 120-point fantasy games so far. And then you look at this Patriots defense, right? They're struggling overall as a team, but the defense gives up the 8th fewest amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks. They've only allowed 4 touchdown passes this season. But look at some of the quarterbacks they played against. Joe Burrow, Geno Smith. Aaron Rodgers threw 2 of those touchdowns against the Patriots. Then they played Brock Purdy. So the Patriots played all these quarterbacks and have only allowed 4 touchdown passes. I got them at quarterback 16 this week, so I'm going to close it out for this week. Let them get used to working without Nico Collins for a week, see how that goes, and then go from there.
Jay, in Matthew's rankings, he has him as QB 11. He's going to ride it out and keep it open. Lawrence has it as a close. What do you do with this one? Obviously, it's very dependent on what's available to you with Stroud, but you have to be a little disappointed considering where people did draft him.
Yeah, definitely. And even with Nico Collins having this amazing season, you would have thought, before the season, if I told you after 5 weeks that Nico Collins is the number 1 wide receiver in football, you would have set the over-under CJ Stroud as like over-under 4.5 in terms of where he's going to rank as a fantasy quarterback. And instead, he's QB 11, so that's disappointing. At the same time, I think more touchdowns will come. He is throwing the ball a ton for a lot of yards. It's a difficult matchup, a difficult issue against the Pats, and we'll see if Christian Gonzalez goes to Stephon Diggs. But it depends on your options. Like, I'd probably, in a nutshell, keep it open, but like I'd be starting, guys in that same area. Like I'd be starting Kirk Cousins over CJ Stroud going up against the Panthers. Even like Daniel Jones against the Bengals defense, probably that's a coin flip as well. So I certainly think he's right on the borderline of keeping it open or shutting it down on him.
We move over, but stay in the division with the Jags backfield right now. Jay, it's kind of been the tank show lately, despite a lot of people drafted Travis Etienne as either their RB1, maybe a high-end RB2. Right now, Matthew has him as RB17 coming into the week, but he only has 1 game this season where he's topped 60 yards.
Yeah, with Etienne, I'd still keep it open just because still regressing to the talent, the pedigree, the expectations coming into the season, the fact that he did get banged up last week, which impacted his stat line. Tank Bigsby is very scary, and I think there's a good chance he takes over the job. But quietly, the Bears are a bit of a run funnel defense, where their pass defense has been best in the NFL in terms of EPA. The rush defense has been slightly below average. I don't think they're a bad rush defense by any means, but that is perhaps where they can be got a little bit as you see the Week 5 comparison between Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby against the Colts, where Bigsby vastly outperformed him, but Etienne did get banged up. And Doug Peterson did reaffirm that Etienne is still the guy. Doug Peterson hasn't typically been reliable on that kind of stuff, but I'm still inclined to start Etienne this week.
The scary thing about this is, as you just saw on that screen, is that Bigsby, for the first time this season, out-snapped him on the field. He's been out-producing him, but this was the first time he was on the field with the offense more than Travis Etienne. And if it wasn't for Peterson coming out to say, he's still the guy, then I probably would close this. But I have him at running back 17 as well, but I also got Tank Bigsby at running back 24, so he's gaining on him. It's crazy to think that we're going into week 6 and we know Travis Etienne has 1 game this year over 60 yards from scrimmage. That's not what any of us thought coming into this season, so we're going to keep it open, but now you have to start tempering the expectations with the with the emergence of Tank Bigsby.
Has Etienne been a disappointment since being taken pick 25 in the draft, came in with all this hype?
I think so, because I think he's been banged up over the years, and now I don't see the explosive playability we once saw at a higher rate. Once in a while, but I thought Etienne would come into the league and have the explosive play rate that we've seen kind of from a Jahmyr Gibbs kind of player, right? That's what's concerning to me. And as we saw in that graphic there, guys, I think the other concern is it feels like the touchdown equity is going to swing all the way to Tank Bigsby. So then you're relying, one, hopefully you're playing PPR and you're getting receptions from Etienne. This isn't what anyone signed up for, like you said.
No, it's not. And 2 years ago, Etienne, he did have the kind of explosive metrics, the next-gen stat stuff where he did look explosive. And then last year was just such a slog. Like he got massive amount of volume last year, but he wasn't efficient at all. The O-line has never really been a strength of the team while he's been there, and it just feels like he's not the same guy athletically at the moment, and Tank Bigsby just looks more explosive.
Right now, we will cap that with he is an open, because you have to realize, too, now we have a lot of bye weeks, and we showed you on the waiver wire show the running back bye weeks are really, really tough this week. So keep that in mind with keep it open or close it out as we kind of head into a lot of different buys. Lawrence, the Steelers' backfield right now, it feels like with the Jalen Warren injury, Cordell Patterson's been banged up, Arthur Smith is there. I feel like this would be the year for Najee Harris, but right now he only has one game this season with more than 12 fantasy points.
I felt like this would be the year. I felt like versus the Cowboys, it would be the game.
Yeah.
You know, past couple of weeks without Jalen Warren, that's kind of your time to get going, you know, then you get the matchup. But, you know, for Najee Harris this week, I'm going to close it out. First off, you got this game with the Raiders and Steelers. The over-under's 36.5, so you don't expect a lot of scoring there, first off. Right, Najee Harris doesn't have a touchdown this season, and he's averaging 3 yards per carry. So I would say the good thing is that he's still getting those opportunities, but you know, kind of fell into do the best with them. Then you look at the Raiders, who this defense is middling. They haven't allowed a rushing touchdown to a running back since week 3. So they're going to be missing Christian Wilkins there in the middle, and that's a extremely big part of it because he had been playing well this season. But it's just once you see some things enough times, and you just talked about it, kind of having bye weeks, and maybe you feel like you have to start Najee Harris. But if you have 2 solid running backs, I would probably start Tank Bigsby over Najee Harris this week, right? So I'm going to close it out on Najee Harris for this week. Sorry, Jay.
Yeah, that's okay, Lawrence. With one first piece of analysis, Lawrence and I were on the field at the stadium formerly known as Heinz Field on Sunday, getting up close to Najee Harris. Yeah. Gigantic human being.
He looked like he about 6'8". He looked like basically LeBron.
Yeah.
But at running back.
Yeah,
like you know he's 6'2", but
it's a different 6'2".
Yeah, he is an absolute monster, which makes me, why aren't you a little bit better at running the football, Najee? But here's the thing with Najee, right? So PFF grades, usually there's about 60 qualifiers at running backs in terms of snaps. Here's where Najee is ranked of those 60 his 4 years in the NFL. 30th, 27th, 21st, 33rd. Like, that's just kind of what he is, I think.
He's just a guy.
He's just an average, like, he's not a bad running back by any means. He's just average, he's solid, and in an offense where that offensive line is not a massive strength of the team. There's no real spacing, so to speak, in the offense because of what they're getting at quarterback at the moment. So, look, the Raiders' defense, against the run, it's been okay, but the past couple of weeks they've played, you know, Bo Nix and the Broncos offense, and then Deshaun Watson the week before that. So their stats are a little bit inflated. The underlying stuff on the Raiders' run defense isn't amazing. So with Najee, again, just with the amount of teams that are on bye now, I would keep it open reluctantly. It's also part of my brand to keep it open on Najee Harris, though, so take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, RB25 for Matthew. He is a close for Matthew this week. I think another thing, Lawrence, too, is that if you have Najee, you're almost rooting for Russ to take over at quarterback at some point in this offseason, so you get a higher dump-off rate than what Fields gives you.
You'll definitely have more in the receiving game, but if that were the case, and by that time, if at some point Russell Wilson did take over, well, Jalen Warren will be back at that time, too. And the last time he was on the field, he looked like he was getting going. He had 9 carries and 40 yards his last time out. So he's either like, you can get that, but then you're going to lose. You're definitely losing something once Jalen Warren get back.
Yeah. The other thing with Fields, and this is the main thing, is that, like, Fields, he runs the ball 9 times a game. Like, it becomes a math problem for guys like Najee. If you're not super efficient and you're a quarterback taking 9 carries a game, it's like there's only so many times you can run the ball.
Yeah, if Lamar or Jaden Daniels run 9 times a game, well, you're scoring 30 points, so you're going to get opportunities. Brian Robinson's going to get those opportunities, right? So, but it's just not the case with this Steelers offense.
Another running back for us here, Jerome Ford against the Eagles. Jay, he hasn't had a game with more than 10 rushing attempts since week 1 in an offense that is I'd say dysfunctional would almost be polite to this offense right now.
Yeah, it might be the worst offense in football. They have, as we talked about yesterday, they have the worst starting quarterback in football at the moment. I just think everything about this team is broken at the moment. There's not a single player that I'd feel comfortable starting. The Jerome Ford and the Amari Cooper would be the two candidates, but don't feel great about either of them at this point. Also, like Nick Chubb is practicing, and he may not come back this week, but his practice window, or the window to get activated, shuts the following week. So he's going to be back at some point. As far as this week goes, though, just the fact that they're 9-point underdogs, the fact that he's the running back in the Deshaun Watson offense, and it's not like he's a workhorse back. Like Deontay Foreman is stealing carries as well. So pretty easy close for me on Jerome Ford.
You agree, Lawrence?
No, of course I agree. The carry, they divvy up the carries weird every week. Like 1 week, Deontay Foreman gets nothing. You saw in week 5, him and Jerome Ford both had 9 carries, right? But then you take that away, plus everything Jay said about the offense as a whole. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles defense, they're pretty bad on the back end right now. They're still trying to improve there, but they've only allowed 1 rushing touchdown this year to running back. So if I know that going into my fantasy matchup, if I have a Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, whoever, if I know that, it's like, okay, whatever. But then when you have a Jerome Ford and you know that same stat about the Eagles defense, it's like, nah, I don't, what are my chances? What are my chances this offense could get down the field consistently? They consistently do not do that. So I had to close as well. I got him at running back 30 this week.
Running back 30 for Matthew as well. Another close. Lawrence, a guy that's been disappointing this year, Chris Olave. Why Rashid Shaheed has really been elevated in this offense that could be without Derek Carr for some time now. Olave really hasn't gotten going. Their number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah, what stinks for him is that he's had 3 games this year so far with 80-plus receiving yards. He's not getting the touchdowns that Rashid Shaheed has. That's why Olave is only wide receiver 43 this season on points per game to Shaheed's wide receiver 25. But I'm going to keep this open. This week. I got Olave at wide receiver 28 because the Tampa Bay Bucks allow the 11th most fantasy points per game to receiver. If you look at what the Falcons just did to these young men, Drake London was wide receiver 2 in week 5. Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 3, and Kaderl Hodge was wide receiver 2. So the Falcons had 3 top 24 receivers versus this Bucks defense. So I would bank on, the Saints being able to have 2 viable receivers, even with the new quarterback, hoping it's Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, I can't remember a worse tackling performance by a secondary than the Bucks in that Atlanta game. And the one time they did make a tackle was on Drake London at the end of the game where they shouldn't have tackled him and let the clock run out. So it's just a mess across the board. The Bucks secondary was terrible last season. It's been terrible this season with this one saving grace, Antoine Winfield, who missed last week. So, look, I think Olave, at some point you just have to defer to the talent. Do you think that if it's Spencer Rattler, is he going to be good enough to be able to service Olave and Rashid Shaheed?
Yeah, I'd be hoping it's Spencer Rattler. Now, you almost wonder if a backup comes in, whether it is Jay Kane or it is Spencer Rattler, who has played a little bit more under control at the back end of his college career than his early end of his college career. But Rattler could push the ball down the field. I wonder if the backup actually leans on Olave a little bit more, who's a smooth route runner. Yeah. He's polished. You want to get him involved in the game. Not saying that it's a Derek Carr problem there, but I think I would trust whichever one of them plays to get Olave enough work.
Yeah, and the thing
I'd root for Rattler.
The thing, in me as well, the thing you like about Rattler too is, what's in his head. The things he went through in college, the way he was demoted at Oklahoma. He was one of the top 5 pick projected, right? He goes to South Carolina, turns it around. He doesn't become a Heisman Trophy winner, but he went through some adversity and still ended up getting drafted, and he may get his opportunity. So, we'll see how that goes.
Our next wide receiver, Calvin Ridley, he's got the Colts secondary that's been vulnerable this year right now. But, Jay, with this quarterback situation, it's just hard to trust Calvin Ridley. For Matthew, he has him as wide receiver 36 and a close. They're coming off a bye, so he's well rested. But can you really start Calvin Ridley anymore?
I don't think you can. He has 9 receptions on the season.
It's
and 2
unbelievable.
across the past 2 weeks. I don't really understand what has happened there. Like, in theory, Will Levis likes to throw the ball deep. Calvin Ridley gets deep, going up against the weak Colts secondary. But at the same time, when a guy's had 2 catches in 2 weeks, I don't know why he is any different than like Gabe Davis last year with the Bills, where you're basically counting on the 50-50 deep ball land. So with Ridley, it's been a bit of a mess. You can see with Matthew's rankings, he's sandwiched in between Jameson Williams and Cortland Sutton. Look, if you want to believe in Calvin Ridley and that it's going to turn around and coming off the bye, he's figured something out, and maybe when you have a receiver as talented as Ridley, who's putting up those type of numbers in back-to-back games, you think that there's something must be wrong physically. But I don't think you can have any confidence starting him with what he's produced statistically so far.
Yeah, back-to-back games, only 1 reception. You look at his season as a whole, outside of a 40-yard touchdown, I don't even know if we would be discussing this. Like, we're discussing whether or not we should start him or put him on the bench, but without that 140-yard touchdown in week 2, like
That should have been picked off. That throw.
Yeah.
It should have.
It ended up being a great catch by him.
Chuck Clark just missed it.
Yeah,
Like,
and that shows you his talent, but them numbers will be looking crazy right now if he didn't have that 1 touchdown. So I got him at wide receiver 35. I'm going to close it out this week till, we get some consistent play at the quarterback position, and, that's where we at with it.
Back to the Texans offense, which we mentioned, Nico Collins on IR now, and this might elevate Tank Dell. So we go to Tank Dell against the Patriots. But it also had us yesterday with an interesting convo with Tank Bigsby's emergence, where we ranked people named Tank. Take a listen.
It's the second year that a tank is making noise in fantasy football.
Yeah.
Because last year, Tank Dell.
I know, and Tank Dell has now fallen down the tank power rankings, I would argue. He's now the number 2 tank.
He's now the number 2 tank.
Tank 2.
Yeah. Number 3, of course, Tank McNamara.
Okay. That was 4.
What?
Can you keep 4?
Yeah.
No, number 4?
I don't know another tank. Tank McNamara is an old-time cartoon.
Men named Tank, Google search. First time I've ever searched that one. I don't know any of these people. Tank Abbott, Tank Carter, Tank Black. No, nothing.
Not happening?
No.
I don't know any of those people either.
And neither do I. Lawrence, you recognize a single one of those names?
Nah, I'm surprised in Jay's Google search, my guy Tank Williams, former safety for the Titans and Patriots, didn't come up. Shout out to my man Tank Williams out there. What about R&B singer Tank? Like, damn, like what's up with the Google these days,
Google kind
man?
of crushed you.
Yeah, well, I just got.
That's Australian Google.
Yeah, it's it's Australian Google. 2, I was just rattled by Matthew making the very contemporary reference to Tank McNamara, which is a comic strip in the 70s.
Yeah.
Which,
that one
really,
I don't know.
I mean,
really put us behind the 8 ball.
Right, Jay and I just sang that stare with a
McNamara?
blank stare. Yeah. So, anyways, Tank Dell, who is currently tank number 2 behind Tank Bigsby right now.
Yeah.
Listen, it hasn't been good for Tank Dell, Lawrence, but the good news is the targets are going to go up because Nico Collins, who owns so much equity in this offense in terms of target share, is now out for 4 games.
Yeah, and it's been proven that when he does get targets, when he gets 7 or more targets, he did that last year. He's gotten over 23 fantasy points per game when he gets that. Like you said, Nico's out. Now we know how long he'll be out, so this will be a chance for Tank Dell to, get it back going again. And while I did close it out on C.J. Stroud, that has a lot to do with the touchdowns that we're not getting. But that clearly doesn't affect the wide receivers as much, especially in PPR leagues. So I'm going to keep it open this week. He's the clear number 2 receiver in the Texans offense right now and could be the number 1 receiver now here in short order if him and C.J. Stroud get that chemistry back. Tough defense, but he should be good to get his numbers.
Yep, there were 6 games last year where Tank Dell had 7+ targets with C.J. Stroud, and he scored 23.4 points per game in those games. So, look, I don't think the talent has gone anywhere. I know he's dealt with injuries, he's dealt with a lot the past 12 months, but I think just the fact that there's a very real world where Tank Dell is the number 1 wide receiver for C.J. Stroud on the weekend if Gonzalez is going to Stephon Diggs.
I think that's the key in the game, assuming, and I would call it a safe assumption, Christian Gonzalez is going to shadow Diggs, which means Tank Dell can get over the top of this defense that's without their 2 starting safeties.
Yeah. How scary is Gonzalez in terms of, like, if you put, Pat Surtain as the number 1 shadow corner, like Christian Gonzalez, how much of a deterrent is he? Yeah.
Effectively, I don't think it's and obviously no one's on Surtain's level. I know The Niners do it with Charvarius Ward.
Yep.
The Titans do it with L'Jarius Sneed.
Yep.
It's more middle of the pack because something I noticed when they did it to Garrett Wilson, and Garrett Wilson caught a touchdown on him on a perfect throw, they also gave him a safety help at times.
Yeah, right.
So I think that's who Gonzalez is covering is clearly who they're trying to wipe out of the game with also some added help.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where Tank Dell could just have a one-on-one with their second or third corner and blow by them.
Yep.
So I think that's what I would look into in this one. Our next pass catcher, Dalton Kincaid. He's got the Jets on Monday Night Football. For Matthew here, Jay, comes in as tight end 7 because even though he's yet to have a game with 50 receiving yards this season, there's just not a lot in the tight end landscape, and he is technically one of their top targeted guys.
Yeah, I just, like, what else are you going to do? Like, if you
Right.
drafted Dalton Kincaid, what, you're going to bench him for Hunter Henry? Like, no, I think you just got to start Dalton Kincaid. There are still very plausible worlds where he's the number one option for Josh Allen, going up against the Jets defense that has been very good, but perhaps not at the all-world elite level that it has been the past couple of years. So, look, I just don't know what else you're supposed to do here. It's been disappointing. It's been underwhelming, but the entire position has been underwhelming. You can see with Matthew's rankings, Kincaid coming in at 7, just one spot behind Sam Laporta, who's also been disappointing. Both of them behind Tucker Kraft, which is remarkable. And then George Kittle. Doesn't even feel like George Kittle's having an amazing season. He's number 1 tight end.
It's amazing. It's unreal. And he's been hurt he's already missed a game.
Yeah.
But when Kittle plays, he's effective.
I mean, I know Dalton Kincaid kind of he doesn't play like the traditional tight end role. He's more of a flex guy out there, but I'm closing it.
Okay.
Wow. Look at you, Lawrence.
Look,
Making
you
a
know who
stand.
I
You've had
start
enough.
over?
With your free Kyle Pitts shirt.
Yeah, free Kyle Pitts. For 2 weeks in a row, free
already
Kyle
been
Pitts.
freed.
Free him 2 weeks in a row so we
redundant
can
now.
start him again or recommend starting him
And then
again.
that's when it goes downhill.
All right, look, the Jets haven't allowed a touchdown to the tight end position this year. They allowed the second fewest fantasy points to tight ends. This is what they're giving up to tight ends per game. 3 catches, 25 yards. So I don't know about that. You look at a guy like Zach Ertz going up against this Ravens defense, which has the second worst pass defense. They allow the second most yards to tight end. Like, I might look over there. I'm a little nervous about Dalton Kincaid this week. We kept it open on him a couple weeks ago. He ended up scoring a touchdown. But for this particular matchup with that defense over there, I just don't know. Like, I do have him at tight end 11, which technically that means you're still starting him for the week. But I would look at guys who are around 12 and 13 and stuff like that and just see if you have a better option. You have to get cute at tight end in fantasy football unless you have the great Brock Bowers.
Right.
You know, so for this week, I'm going to close it on Mr. Kincaid.
Okay. You go start Zach Ertz. I'll start the first
I will. I'm going to.
And at the end of the day, probably no one wins.
Yeah.
That's what it comes
Probably.
down to.
But look,
8
that game.
points versus 7 points.
That game is
Arcade on.
that Ravens-Commanders game is 52 and a half.
Yeah.
I don't know what this one is, but I know it ain't that.
MVP showdown. Jaden
Yeah.
Daniels and Lamar Jackson. I
You
think
imagine
they'd
if the
finish-
Commanders win?
They'd finish 1 and 2 in MVP today, I think.
It's crazy. But it's not, honestly, with the way they played this year, especially Lamar. All right, let's recap Matthew's Keep It Open, Close It Out rankings. I'll go through Matthew's, and then Lawrence, you piggyback off of this with yours. C.J. Stroud was an open. Etienne was an open. Najee Harris and Jerome Ford both closed. Chris Olave, keep that one open at wide receiver 28. Calvin Ridley closed as wide receiver 36. Tank Dell stays open, especially with the Collins injury. Dalton Kincaid is at tight end 7 for him despite his early struggles. That's open. Lawrence, how do these stack up for you?
For me, I got Stroud as a close, Travis Etienne as an open, Najee Harris as a close, Jerome Ford another close. Got to keep it open on Chris Olave. Definitely closing it on Calvin Ridley. We'll leave it open for Tank Dell. And I'm closing it on Dalton Kincaid.
All right, let's jump into the Rotoworld Player news. For all your Rotoworld Player news, go to NBCSports.com. And some more somewhat breaking news. Drake Maye is expected to start Sunday against the Texans here, Jay. Kind of an odd timing for a player they've been so keen on protecting. The Texans defense, I mean, they were massacring Caleb Williams not that long ago. This is a good defense and a tough test for the rookie.
Yeah, if Josh Allen goes 9 for 30 against the Texans defense, Drake Maye goes 3 for 30. It's tough to go up against Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, and D'Amico Ryans' defense. But at the same time, like, I'm very much of the school of there's never going to be a perfect time to throw him in.
Right,
At some point,
yes.
he has to face
number 3
NFL
pick in the
defenses.
draft.
Yeah, and here's the other thing too. Like, all right, you're going to wait for the offensive line to be great. Well, it's not going to be great the rest of this year.
Wait
Might
2
not be good
years?
this year. Yeah, what do I
Right,
wait
exactly.
till 2028? Trade
Get
for
on,
Penei
get on
Sewell?
out
Like, what are
there.
you doing?
I felt like he should have played week 1, to be honest. Like, look, you were a number 3 overall pick. That means your team's not good. Jaden Daniels, his team wasn't that good, but you make the players better. We saw it with C.J. Stroud last year. Like, let's see what these rookies got. You get better by playing, and I always say that for all of these first and second year quarterbacks. Let them play through their first year or two. Like, let's see what the kid got. Let's see if he could be successful with whatever deficiencies that they have. Like, you just never know until they play. And it seems that now in week 6, they ready to see that.
Yep. Tweet from Kevin Cole, who does great work on Substack, Unexpected Points. Here's the PFF pass blocking rankings for some of the great rookie seasons of recent vintage. Stroud, 19th. Justin Herbert, 30th ranked O-line for pass blocking. Andrew Luck, 22nd. Cam Newton, 23rd. Like, generally, if you're taking a superstar quarterback at the top of the draft, you probably don't have an amazing offensive line. So I think, yeah, it makes sense to just get him out there. But fantasy-wise, Connor, how effective do you think he can be this week and going forward?
This week, I would not play him unless you're really desperate. And in our league of assholes, a lot of us are really desperate at the QB2 spot. But, you look at where they're throwing him in right now, right? They've lost 4 games in a row. He's got the Texans. I wouldn't even think about starting him in this one. But you look against the Jaguars in the London game. I know they're getting some help with Tyson Campbell coming back, but that's a vulnerable defense. And then, it kind of gets tough again with the Jets and the Titans. But when it comes down to it with Drake Maye, what I expect is at least more running, right? He's a guy that'll look to break the pocket and maybe make a play down the field or even take off with his legs because that offensive line is going to struggle so much. And Lawrence, this is an offense that there hasn't been a lot of opportunity for big plays, but it feels like Drake Maye will take the chances and hunt them, where Jacoby Brissett was much more conservative and played it safe.
Yeah, and that's crazy, too, because last year we saw Jacoby Brissett come in for the Commanders and let it rip, right? But I don't think that's what the Patriots wanted him to do. You said it. What Drake Maye will do is he'll break that pocket, and we've seen it this year all along. All these quarterbacks, when stuff breaks down, being able to use that mobility to get outside, keep the eyes down the field to make a play that way. But unless it's super flex and then you are in this league of assholes, he's probably not a starter for this week. You just said it. Josh Allen had himself a hell of a day, and not in a good way, with this Texans defense. So I like it from a football standpoint. Just him getting in there, having C.J. Stroud on the other side. Like, this is what you want. Like, remember when Will Levis came in last year and threw 4 touchdowns for the Vikings? Like, Drake Maye, young man, you have the chance to do that, and this is a picture of us.
Our text, this is our Fantasy League text thread right now. As backup producer Pete said, Drake Maye will start Sunday every other league. No one cares. The League of Assholes. Everybody is fighting to claim Drake Maye because for some odd reason we are a super flex league. So at this time of year, people are spending incredible amounts of fab. And for that reason, producer Damien, Michelle Pfeiffer Hall Pass, drinks for free. Because I believe he spent $36.
So he throwing them right in the lineup.
Yes, of a $100 budget, not a $1,000 budget. $36.
And he might done spit some of that 100 already.
Right. This was
Maybe.
it.
Yeah.
This was it.
So this is your
Risk
guy.
it all for Drake Maye.
Yeah. I guess the thing with this is, with rookie quarterbacks, we talk so much about their context and what kind of weapons they have and how's the O-line. Like, it's mostly just going to come down to, is he any good or not from the start, right?
Man.
Because that's what it determines. Like, and no one thought that Jaden Daniels had great weapons or a great O-line coming into the season. Jaden Daniels has been arguably the best quarterback in football through the first 5 weeks. And look, same thing with Stroud last year. Everyone's like, oh, Stroud's in a disaster situation. Think about how bad C.J. Stroud looked in week 1 last year against Baltimore. And it's like, this is going to be a disaster. C.J. Stroud figured it out. Now, I would guess that the average outcome is Drake Maye is probably not going to be amazing, because it doesn't seem like he's the type of prospect who is going to walk in and be C.J. Stroud from day one. But there are worlds where he is just really, really good.
In some other news, Derek Carr with that oblique injury is expected to miss multiple games right now. Mike Garafolo of NFL Network has said Spencer Rattler is a strong candidate to start. Lawrence, you were saying earlier, you prefer Rattler in the spot, especially if it's for an extended stretch, which it sounds like it could be.
Yeah, and just like we talked about with Drake Maye, the mobility that's there, Spencer Rattler will give you a lot of that. He will give you some, like he could give you some of that YOLO type of football.
For sure.
But when he locks in, he could be pretty good. Remember, this is the guy who was playing with Xavier Legette all of last season, resurrected his career. He could get the ball downfield. So we kind of like that, for both of these Saints wide receivers. So, and we've seen a little bit of Jake Hayner, last year there. So, if it is Spencer Rattler, which is not concrete yet,
No,
right?
not yet.
If it is Spencer Rattler, I would say you would have better upside for the Saints passing game, because if he does turn the ball over, like most rookies do, that's not affecting our wide receivers, right? So you just want guys who could get him the ball effectively.
Yeah.
Especially against the Bucs.
Yeah, definitely. Very favorable matchup, at least in terms of the secondary, though at the same time, you probably, in a nutshell, wouldn't want to be making your first start against Todd Bowles, just with all the crazy blitzing that he does. Now, it didn't work at all and hasn't really worked that much this season, but still, in theory, a difficult aspect there. But I think the issue kind of with the Saints at the moment is just that the offensive line has just collapsed.
Yeah.
Where Eric McCoy goes down, arguably the best lineman that they have, and then Cesar Ruiz is down, and then all of a sudden, like, they were just under siege a little bit against the Chiefs, and just doesn't feel like they have the magic of the first 2 weeks.
It feels like with the McCoy injury, the dam broke a little bit. The first 2 weeks, something we talked about a lot was their offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, was doing a good job keeping Carr out of these true deep drop-back situations. But it's football. At some point, you're going to be in a natural static offense and drop back, and then they can't pass protect to do that.
Yep. I think in week 2 against the Cowboys, which feels like a long time ago for the Saints should have started the season 4-0.
Right.
That was a travesty they lost the Falcons game. They deserve to lose the Eagles game on balance, but at the same time, like, if they don't give up the 65-yarders that Dallas got, they probably win that game. But in that Cowboys game, they had 3 pure dropbacks the entire game. Everything else was either a run, a screen, or a play-action pass, and it just doesn't feel like – it feels like that smoke and mirrors act has been solved a little bit, and the McCoy going down has really hurt.
It really has. All right, let's talk about some of the injuries that we're tracking early in the week. As we get more practice reports, we'll stay all over these. Anthony Richardson is still dealing with the oblique. Keep an eye on him, but if he's ready to go, obviously he'll start over Joe Flacco. Aaron Rodgers has a low ankle, and they have the extra day with Monday Night Football. He is expected to play. Russell Wilson has been ramping up his workload with the calf injury that goes all the way back to the summer. Malik Neighbors, we're waiting to hear if he can get out of concussion protocol after missing his first game of his NFL career last week. We'll see if he avoids missing a second one. Joe Mixon, not a lot of clarity from D'Amico Ryans on that ankle. Zach Moss also dealing with an ankle. It could be a huge Chase Brown week. Devin Singletary missed last week with the groin. It helped Tyrone Tracy have his first real action of his NFL career. We'll see if that continues. And Evan Ingram could be on his way back out with the hamstring injury. This Sunday night, don't miss Joe Burrow and the Bengals travel east for a date with Dexter Lawrence and the New York Giants. Coverage of the matchup in the Meadowlands begins at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. A big one. This is going to be a shootout, guys. I mean, Bengals, Giants, 2 secondaries.
Maybe closer than we think.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Malik Neighbors come back.
A preseason spread on this.
That
Things
Bengals defense been getting lit up.
Giants with a huge upset over the Seahawks. Bengals with an absolute heartbreaker against the Ravens. Joe Burrow will be ready to go. We'll see if Daniel Jones is there to match.
Bengals plus 140 to just be 1-5. They could be 1-5.
Crazy. All right, we're taking our first break. When we're back, we'll be looking at Rico Dowdle, maybe as an every week start, a running back moving forward. We'll debate it next.
All right, 2nd and goal, and the Bears have Kramer in there as a left wing motion man to the right, plows through his man. They run it to Swift up the middle. He's in for the touchdown. Touchdown Bears. This
Who's eating good? Served by Applebee's. That was DeAndre Swift plowing into the end zone. DeAndre Swift, who on the show, guys, we basically wrote off for the season at one point, and he's back better than ever. Look at, I mean, you just talk about weeks 1 to 3 compared to 4 versus 5 right now, Lawrence. We're trying to figure out who is the real DeAndre Swift this season.
The real one is the one we've been seeing the past 2 weeks. Even 2 weeks ago, we had him on Keep It Open, Close It Out prior to his Rams game, and I was like, keep it open. But because I saw the matchup there. But, man, look, do you find it a coincidence that, the Bears, who have won 2 straight games in a row, Caleb Williams in the offense all of a sudden looks better, right? Maybe it's because the Bears line blocking a little better. You got the run game going now to help the young quarterback. Now the offense as a whole has just gotten better. Look, in week 4, Swift had a run of 36 yards and a reception of 27 yards. Those were their 2 biggest plays of the game. In week 5, he had a run of 18 yards and a 42-yard reception. Again, the Bears' 2 biggest offensive plays in the week. So, he did play against the Rams and the Panthers, both in the last 2 weeks, both ranking the bottom 6 for points per game allowed to running backs. But they're playing the Jaguars this week. They allow the 9th most fantasy points to running backs. So, I think in football, it kind of, if you start stacking plays and stacking wins and scoring touchdowns, you just need to build some confidence so that when you do play better teams, the offense is flowing. So that week 1 Bears win was kind of like both teams, versus the Titans. Both of the teams was trying to lose the game, right? Yep. These last 2 wins that the Bears have gotten have been solid wins, and you've seen their offense much more consistent. Caleb Williams looking much more better, and that's because DeAndre Swift finally got going. I know on the internet people say, he don't got no vision or nothing like that. Man, he's a 1,000-yard running back. We've seen him have success at every single stop that he has. He got off to a horrible start with an offense that was horrible as a whole. I think DeAndre Swift is here to stay, and he's on a lot of my fantasy teams.
Okay. Well, I don't really believe that much in DeAndre Swift, but I do believe in Caleb Williams, and I think those things are very intertwined. I think DeAndre Swift is fine. I don't think he's like a game-changing type of running back, but I think he's good enough that Caleb Williams and his improvement can help carry DeAndre Swift to week relevance. He played 49 out of 74 snaps, so it's not like he's a super workhorse back, but he's out there enough. It's clearly still his backfield. You worry a bit that Roschon Johnson has had a goal line carry in back-to-back weeks. So I think that Swift, every week he's going to be in that like RB 10 to 16 type of ranking range, that kind of one, which is completely fine.
Yeah, that's about where I got him at. I got him at running back 9 this week. Again, like in these past 2 weeks, he's gotten 23 touches per game. So, and it's crazy too because Roschon Johnson had the 2 touchdowns, right? I'm almost fine with that if you could get him these amount of touches. Like, it don't even have to be 23. Give him 18-ish touches. And if you want to give Roschon Johnson a goal line touch or a short yardage touch here or there. But the thing was, Connor and Jay, the week before they played the Rams, they said Roschon Johnson was going to get an extended look. So that's kind of what had me like, oh, boy. But then they just gave DeAndre Swift more touches. So I think maybe they like want to light a fire under his ass or something. Yeah. It worked, right? Yep. But like you said, Jay, I'm not putting him with Saquon and Jonathan Taylor or anything of that nature, but definitely a running back who has the agility and the ability to, be functional in his offense. Very good back.
And the good news for him, too, we talked about the schedule, how he's feasted the last 2 weeks on weaker teams. You mentioned this, Lawrence. It's Jacksonville this week. Okay, bye week, rest your legs. Commanders and Cardinals. The Cardinals are one of the worst run defenses all in football. Commanders have been a great story, but they play in shootouts more often than not. So,
how real do you think Caleb's improvement has been in the past 2 weeks? Or do you think he's just feasting on a couple of suspect defenses?
No, I think it's noticeable. He looks more comfortable. He's throwing with timing. It's crazy, right? For how good Jaden Daniels has been, there was a reason Caleb Williams was the #1 pick in the draft, and now we're seeing some of that. And listen, he doesn't have the rushing ability that Jaden has. He could run a little bit, but the arm talent is off the charts. And getting comfort and timing with your receivers. Lawrence brought this up. The offensive line is playing like an adequate offensive line, not an abysmal unit. Yeah. And I think that's the difference. And I don't see a reason that should change against Jacksonville, Washington, and Arizona.
Yep. Fantasy-wise, Jaden Daniels has to project as better than Caleb Williams because of the rushing go forward. Football-wise, though, from this point of the season on, do you think Caleb is better than Jaden?
It's going to be interesting. I like the offense Jaden is in better right now, so I'll lean with that. I think him and Cliff really – Cliff has matched what Jaden does best and how he threatens better than what Caleb is doing right now.
It gets to a point where you just – if you see something – you get to watching the Commanders' offense and you feel like every drop back Jaden Daniels has is going to be a completion. Well, that's what it was like the first 4 weeks. He damn near completed every pass. At points of the Bears season, it was like this is going to be a turnover or a loss or something's going to go wrong. But these last 2 games, now Caleb Williams is getting the ball to DJ Moore more consistently. So the offense as a whole has been good, and that's why I have some faith in DeAndre Swift because he's part of that. He's the guy who's going to, outside of the quarterback, he's going to touch the ball the most in any game. So, good for him.
Rico Dowdle, he's got the Lions. He's been eating good, Jay. Last week, 20 rush attempts for Rico Dowdle. He's RB23 for Matthew going into this week, but is he a reliable starter going forward? Ezekiel Elliott's been a non-factor in this offense.
Indeed, and Lawrence and I will always be able to say and tell our grandkids respectively that we were in the stands for the Rico Dowdle breakout game as Lawrence is actually crushing chicken tenders, speaking of chicken tenders, during that breakout game. But yeah, I mean, look, 20 for 87 in an offense that is just in a really weird place at the moment. I don't know what's going on with CD Lamb and the connection with Dak. I mean, CD's been fine, but he hasn't been close to the guy that he was last year. The fact that Rico Dowdle was able to put up this type of volume, gets a little bit of work in the receiving game as well, 2 for 27, scores the touchdown. He's still only playing 50% of the snaps, which is a little bit weird. It's like, how do you play 50% of the snaps with your 20 carries? But when he's in there, he's getting the ball, and I just think that with how just lifeless Zeke has looked, this is clearly Rico's offense, and you suspect he's going to get receiving work on third down. Cowboys' schedule is absolutely brutal coming up. It's basically like they play the Niners every week, it feels like, and they're 3-point dogs at home to Detroit. So I think it's going to be ugly for Rico Dowdle. You're not going to get the super efficient games, but I think through volume alone, he is probably not a must start, but I think you'd feel comfortable having him as a flex every week.
Yeah, I think he's a guy who's in a position where you have him in the flex every week and you're saying, should I start him or this guy? And you'll play the matchup with that when you have like a Rico Dowdle or somebody like Najee Harris. Now you would start Rico Dowdle right now because they've been ramping him up more and more every week. Now, this is the thing, this was his, I guess, breakout game, right? Pittsburgh defense has allowed, this is now their second straight game where they've allowed a running back to have over 105 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. So how good is this Steelers defense, especially from a run defense standpoint? Now you go to Detroit, right, where
not easy.
Yeah, you go to Detroit where on the back end you could get something in the passing game, but they're only allowing 58 rushing yards per game to running backs. That's the 4th best in the NFL. They allow the 7th fewest fantasy points per game to running backs. So you have this game. It's going to be tough, right? Then they got the bye. Then they're at San Francisco and at Atlanta. Those are both going to be tough games. And I could definitely see Dak having to throw a lot in every single one of these games. We just saw the Lions before their bye was in a shootout with the Seahawks. So if Rico Dowdle can become part of that even more, then we'll start talking about like every week. But right now, he's not a just bona fide every week starter. He's a spot starter right now, but definitely somebody who's flex worthy.
Kareem Hunt turned back the clock in week 5, 27 carries, 102 rushing yards. He also caught a pass for 15 yards, fell into the end zone on a rushing touchdown. Listen, they're on a bye week this week, Jay, and this is an offense that really needs to get healthy and right, although there was a lot of signs of life on Monday Night Football. I mean, is Kareem Hunt going to maintain this workload? Carson Steele feels like he's been phased out of this offense entirely.
Yeah, and the only other guy is Samaje Perine, who doesn't scare. So I just think by default, look, Kareem Hunt, it's straight. Like he had 27 carries in an offense commandeered by Patrick Mahomes. So that just means he just kind of has to be rostered and started every week going forward, at least as a flex guy. And the thing with Hunt too is that I get that he only had, I don't think any rushing attempt topped 8 yards on the ground, but he looked good. I thought he looked Not necessarily explosive, but he certainly looked like he had more life than, say, an Ezekiel Elliott. He did have the one reception for 15 yards as well. And I think the key, Connor, is that this Chiefs offense, it has to lean on the running game and the short passing game. And there's just not that many other people on the team. So I think Kareem Hunt, I don't think he's going to get 27 carries every week, but he could get 15 carries each week.
They want to run the ball.
Shout out to
right?
Patrick Mahomes for rolling out there with the 2017-18 Pro Bowl roster. Got my boy Juju out there, too. Look, not even this past game in Week 5. Week 4 was really when Kareem Hunt was off the couch, and they just said, here, 16 touches, 85 yards, and that let me know that Week 5 we could potentially have a week like what he just had. So going forward, he's the veteran back. He's a guy who knows what to do in this offense. You know, he's been with Andy Reid before, so like you said, Carson Steele, he fumbled too much, young guy. Like, Kareem Hunt is on now.
One of the biggest matchups of the college football season kicks off on Saturday night. Both Ohio State and Oregon have national title hopes, and they'll battle it out under the lights in Eugene. Coverage of the Top 5 Showdown begins at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. We're taking our last break. When we're back, last call. Find out which games of the weekend we're betting. Early line alert right after this. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app and use promo code Berry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. It's time for last call. A little early line alert action here on a Wednesday as we take a look at some of these spreads and totals very, very far in advance of the weekend. Jay, what do you got your eye on going into this weekend?
Taking your Tennessee Titans, Connor, +1 at home against the Colts. Not really sure why they're underdogs in this game. Jonathan Taylor not practicing. Anthony Richardson is, which I think might actually help the Titans. I think Joe Flacco, just in terms of winning games this week, might be more useful, just a better pocket passer. So give me the Titans. I believe in their defense.
Lawrence, what about you?
I'm going to take your other team, Connor, the New York Jets, who have a new intern head coach, former player Jeff Obridge. He's going to bring the energy there. I'm going to take them money line against the Bills. With all the drama they got going on, this is like, you want new energy, right? This is what they wanted. This is what the Jets need, quite frankly. So we'll see what happens. I got Jets money line.
I'm going to take my third team here, guys. How about the Steelers? The Steelers are favored by 3 points against the Raiders. The Raiders are a bit of a mess right now. The over-under that Lawrence hinted at earlier in the show is 36.5. Not a lot of points. No Devontae Adams. I think the Steelers can cover that line. They need a get-right game after a disappointing loss at home against the Cowboys.
Yep, I like that.
All right, that's it for us. Matthew will be back tomorrow. Jay, you will have a much-deserved day off. Lawrence, you're back tomorrow too, right?
I'm back on Thursday.
We're rocking and
Let's
rolling.
get it.
All right, as the man once said, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. We'll catch everyone tomorrow for a little love-hate.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.